Can we talk for a minute about our Integrating Heart and Mind workshop?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's coming up in the fall of 2024.
I'm so excited. We changed the format to make it more accessible to people with like work schedules and personal schedules. And so this time we're going to do it 3 hours on a Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, and 5 hours on Saturday for 2 different weeks in September.
Yeah, it's so great. Like if you're finding yourself stuck in like sticky bad patterns or having communication issues or something like that, or if you want to just like get closer and trust yourself or your partner more, this is the workshop for you.
Yeah, and individuals are welcome, couples are welcome. If you're interested in really thinking through how to serve yourself well inside of your relationships, then we've built a workshop that will support you in finding the ways that are just right for you.
To sign up, head over to our website at whydoesmypartner.com/events.
We hope you'll join us. Welcome to the Why Doesn't My Partner podcast. I'm Jules.
I'm Vickey.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met through our training and practice of relational life therapy. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy. If something you hear in this episode stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com and leave us a question of your own. Here's today's question.
Why does my partner set me up to react when he makes controversial statements that are hurtful or mis-representational and expect that I don't react? And then when I react, he tells me that I'm being angry and that I'm wrong. And I always create a fuss about everything, when I feel that if he had not have said what he said, there wouldn't be an issue.
So ladies, why does my partner make me react? Set me up. He's setting her up.
Is he though?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about.
I'm going right there. Like I'm going to like, okay, I think both. I don't know them from anything other than what we've just heard.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm thinking, how are her boundaries and her ability to contain some of whatever's coming out? And also, there's probably something he can turn around and take a look at on his side. Like maybe there is something about like some judgment and his needing to be right. And like there's very likely something there going on. And I think it's one of those places where we have to start with a U-turn.
I'm going to encourage a U-turn for both partners here.
Yeah.
What I'm reading through, and I'm guessing, but I'm reading a being right battle here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm going to say a thing. It's probably, I don't think she's wrong. He's saying it in a way that's provocative or controversial. Maybe it's a statement about something going on in their relationship that's got an always never in it. Maybe it's something politically provocative that he knows she disagrees with. I don't know what's going on. But my guess is there's something happening there where we're engaging in a conversation. And then if she disagrees, and I don't know how you're disagreeing, and how you're disagreeing matters a lot, right? But then when the disagreement happens, now we're going to be in a being right battle about who's right about the opinion of the statement originally made. And then we're going to blame somebody for getting angry and say it's all your fault for getting angry, or it's all your fault for making me angry. Either way. And so I feel like this being right battle is going on 2 levels. One is about the statement itself, and the other is about the type of interaction, that the interaction is a wrong kind of interaction or a fine kind of interaction.
So I want to back it up a little bit because I have two theories to answer her of why is he doing this. Two different theories.
Okay.
One is, because I found this about myself, and I'm going to make it me, but I do think this is a lot of us. I expect my husband to be in his second consciousness / whatever, connected brain all the time.
Wise adult, relational health.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I expect him to be there.
You expect him to be perfect.
Oh, I do. I totally do. So that's one reason is I wonder if the husband's just expecting her or the partner's expecting her to always be in that other mindset. She's not going to be. And I get that.
Right. Let me break down what you're saying. So basically the expectation is I can say whatever I want in whatever way I want, and you should be in such a wise adult state that you have only a calm and pleasant reaction to me, regardless of how I said what I said.
Okay, yes. And I don't
is
like
that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm just making sure I'm following.
It makes a lot more sense in my mind. And when I phrase it that way, it sounds much more believable and doable. So
I think a lot of our magical thinking sounds better in our brain. And it then sounds like, oh my God, what was that? How was I thinking that when we say it out loud?
I don't like you calling it magical thinking.
Okay. Do you have another name for it? I can go with that. What do you want to call it, Vicky?
I would say butting your head up against the wall of reality.
Okay, there we go. Let's call it that.
I would say how wonderful my world would be if Gabe would just do that. So there's that.
You know what this
if
is?
He lived in your reality.
I love this.
I call it magical thinking.
It is.
It is magical thinking.
It totally is. But I really didn't realize it until you guys said that. I know how unrealistic it was. I know it's unrealistic. I also know it's what I really do expect.
It is.
And I know I'm not alone.
It's this piece about we have different subjective realities, different experiences, right? It's what we talk about whenever Jules is talking to us about our history colored lenses, right? This is that stuff. And right. I'm just going to put it out there again. Big plug for quantum physics, right? There is no such thing as objective reality.
Oh, thank you. I was like, I have no idea what you mean by quantum physics.
Quantum physics has proven that there's no such thing as objective reality. It's really exciting. And if you want to totally geek out, go Google it. I'm not going to waste our time talking about quantum physics because it's way over my head. But you can Google it and there's tons out there on this. There's no such thing as objective reality.
That makes sense. What you're saying absolutely makes sense.
And I think there's two issues going on brain-wise here. One is the history colored glasses problem, which we talk about a lot, but I want to think about another one. So I'm a trauma therapist and I train trauma therapists, but something I'm very fond of telling all my trauma therapists who come to me for training is this: even if all of the trauma were totally gone, magic, poof, gone, we would still have a job. And here's why. Your brain is capable of imagining perfection, but you live here. And that is a very painful and frustrating experience. And so I will always have a job, no matter what, because I'm going to help people work through the grief of that truth.
Yes.
And which has very little to do with your history and very much to do with dreaming and your future and what's possible, right? All of our goals and dreams and seeking comes out of the space. So how cool.
Yeah.
But when so I'm guessing it's a dude, but I could be wrong. When your partner comes to you and says the provocative thing, and it may be provocative, it may not be, we don't know. Well, there's no such thing as objective reality. Quantum physics has proved that.
But we do know that in this particular question, the person who's asking it says, why does my partner set me up to react? And that's an important piece, the set me up.
Yeah, because that means he's not expecting her to be in connected brain, mindfulness, all the words we were using.
Or she thinks that he should not expect that.
Right. That's interesting.
Right.
I forgot that.
And he might actually be expecting that, just like you're expecting that of your husband. That you get to hop off about whatever, and he's supposed to have a really calm reaction. And then when he doesn't, you get pissed at him. Right.
Well, or it's also the other thing I was thinking was, and I want to come back to that setup, Rebecca, which was the real question. But the other thing I'm thinking is when he doesn't agree with, and we've talked about this, I think even offline, sometimes when he doesn't agree with me, I'm blindsided because I really think I brought up something that was like this flippant little conversational piece. And now he's disagreeing with me. And I'm like, how did we get here? This was an easy one. Like, you weren't supposed to disagree with this. Because it might be like, we agree on this topic. How are you disagreeing with me on this nuance? Like, so that was my other thing, is that maybe he's blindsided because he expects her to agree with him and then he doesn't, and then she doesn't. But I now have
something that I see in my office all the time is I'll be sitting with a couple and they'll be in a conversation, and from where I'm sitting, they're agreeing with each other. And from where they're sitting, they're not. They're in totally different worlds. And well, you said it with this tone of voice and I don't understand why, right? And so it's like there's a total mismatch happening. Yes. And it's not actually about the thing they're talking about. It's about something else that they're picking up on. Some other piece of sensory experience that is confirming or disconfirming, right? Like something that they think they know.
Yeah.
There is another piece in this question that I just want to also highlight.
Do it.
Because I think as we listen to this listener question, I love when we get these recorded audio listener questions. I think it's so helpful for our listeners to also hear the questions from the person who's asking them.
With their voice.
With their voice. And I think in this particular one, we get a lot of information because we can start to feel into, this isn't just about this one particular question. There's other dynamics underneath this. Like why does he set me up to react? He makes hurtful or misrepresentative comments, but then here's the piece, something about, calling her angry or wrong, telling her that she creates a fuss. And then when she turns it around and says, it wouldn't be an issue if he just kept his mouth shut, right? Like if he didn't say anything. So we're getting a sense of like, okay, so here's an angry woman and a man who's saying too much, right? Like there's something that's showing up in here in terms of like the roles that they're being cast in. Whether it's consensual or not consensual, that they're somehow casting each other or casting themselves into these roles. And I'd be curious with this couple, how much that dynamic plays out in other ways.
Yeah. There's a couple of U-turns here that I'd like to invite anyone really who has this sort of question to contemplate. One is the phrase, set me up. That's a really interesting phrase, set me up to react. And the reason I think it's really interesting is you gave the power of how you are expressing yourself to another person.
Yes.
In that phrase. I think feeling is a much more nuanced experience than somebody says something and then they made me feel X, whatever, feeling sad, angry, whatever. That's actually a very complex process going on. And I don't know what it is this person's saying, but I do know that if someone made me react, I'm putting that in quotes, what I did was I just gave them the power to do that. So I get to be, the U-turn here is, are you allowing yourself to be responsible for the pause between what you feel and what you do? And are you allowing yourself to be responsible for bringing your own curiosity to whatever feelings came up? And yes, they are in response to the stimulus that just came into the environment. Your partner said something, you had an emotional reaction to it. True, right? And this feeling story isn't so clear. How exactly that feeling came to be was stimulus plus everything about where you are right now, plus everything you've ever lived in your entire life and how you've organized those into meaning categories that sit on the subconscious psychological floor. Mix that all together and you get a feeling. So I don't think that someone's setting you up to feel a particular way, and reaction is a really interesting word, because that would actually move forward into a thought process where I feel and I do without a pause in between.
Right. So what you're lining up is the difference between what we call first and second consciousness. Because first consciousness is where there is no pause. Second consciousness is where there's more of a pause. I like to use, Jules, everything you just described lines up really well with this quote that's often attributed to Viktor Frankl. I don't know that it's actually a Viktor Frankl quote, but the quote is something along, I'm going to paraphrase it, between the stimulus, the things that happen to us, and our response to that stimulus, there lies a space. Inside that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response.
Yeah.
Right. And
100%.
I like to really break down the word responsible. I like to think of it like responsible. Okay, if I'm responsible, I am able to respond. If I'm reactive, I'm just reacting something old.
Something old.
It's the reacting, right? There's something
I
that's
love
kind of,
this.
yeah.
I love your wordplay there. I think it's a really easy way to remember it and understand the difference between them. Yeah. And there's a second U-turn for the person asking the question. And that is, I don't know what kind of subjects are coming up, but I am curious about this. Is there any way for your partner to bring up something that's hard for them in a way that would not set you up for a reaction? If so, tell them and see if they can do it.
Tell them.
If not, then probably what's going on is that you actually don't want feedback. And that might be a really difficult space if authenticity is what we're looking for.
I like you said.
Yeah. Go ahead, Vickey.
Some people aren't looking for authenticity or the deeper level of connection. So it would be like to really look into that. Is that really what you're looking for?
Yeah. And I was just thinking about your use of the word feedback there, not wanting feedback. Because feedback, when I hear that, I think of like, it's in response to something maybe that I said, or you're offering a deeper interpretation of something. Whereas I think there's also some people who just don't want to talk about hard things. And that might speak more to that authenticity place that you're talking about. So it might just be like, what kind of relationship are we looking for here? What's our value system? What are we in this together for? What's that agreement?
Yeah. And just to be total devil's advocate about it, there have been plenty of moments where I've seen someone come into my office, and it's often a dude, and he is trying to provoke her. Now, whether or not she lets that happen, that's different. But there's like a Lordy, I've seen it many, many times, where there's a little bit of like a teasing, poking. He might say something he knows is going to get her going.
Definitely.
And then if she bites, either ridicule or dismiss or counterattack. So if that's what's happening, then I have a U-turn for your partner. What's the hope here? When you say something is provocative, she's going to have a response. What is it you really want?
He thinks it's cute when she reacts.
It's never cute.
It might
be about cute.
He thinks it. Gabe and I have this conversation, so I know this. He thinks my reaction is cute. And what I tell him is I literally motion. I'm doing this for the girls. I circle my face and I say, is this what you were hoping for? And he goes, well, no, it went too far. So there's the problem. But so you're right, there's a setup, and it said if you react, I'm not saying she should at all. I'm saying if the reaction is small enough, he thinks it's cute and he was going for that. This isn't all men, but I will say it's Gabe. And then I usually don't give him that small reaction. My reaction's bigger, and then he regrets it.
Can I tell you why I'm actually really compassionate about this for dudes? Dude connection is often done through teasing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're a dude's dude. Most of the intimate connection that I see dudes doing is a lot through like sort of teasing or joking or sarcasm. And so if you bring that into a relationship with a woman who did not grow up where that was a way of connecting, it's just provocative and awful. Stop it. But I have a ton of compassion for why it may land as like, what? I was just trying to have a conversation, or what? I was just trying to connect with you. When maybe you have an sort of unconscious, subconscious landscape that says that's what connection feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a locker room jab.
Exactly.
Sure,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's actually it's as close to feeling connected as a lot of dude world is allowed to be. Not all. I think that's changing. I don't want to paint it with a black and white sort of lens.
Right, but depending on what generation we're talking about.
Yeah. Exactly. And there is a landscape where, well, how do you connect if vulnerability is off the table? Because for men, for centuries, vulnerability is not allowed. So since vulnerability is required to connect, how do you do that? Well, you go into battlefields with buddies and you hit vulnerability the hard way, and they get really, really close. All the soldiers I've ever worked with are tied to their brothers in arms like they're twins. Or you tease the crap out of each other. Oh, and by the way, all the soldiers I've ever worked with do that too.
So you've seen it in action. I mean, not necessarily.
Oh, yeah. So that might be a bit about what's going on, about why this is happening. But for this couple, if this is resonating with you, I suggest you turn on both sides. Own your pause between what you feel and what you do. Be curious about why the feelings are coming up the way they are, and how that may be partly about what's going on and partly about everything else that's ever happened for you. And if your person that you're with is giving you feedback that you say things that are provocative, do a U-turn. Find out what it is you're really wanting.
Find out what it is. And I got one more piece that I want to throw in here before we wrap up. And that's that if your partner is saying something and it's really getting a rise out of you, that's bringing you to a place where you get angry. I want to invite you to do that pause. And inside of that pause, I'm curious if there's a boundary that you're not holding, that you're not setting, if that anger is trying to tell you something. Right? And if there's anger there, there's very likely that there's either some resentment or some frustration or somewhere that you haven't been listened to, or there's something going on there that's saying, hold on, wait, pay attention to me. You need to set a boundary, or you need to respect your own boundary, like set it and you hold it. It's not about you setting a boundary that someone else has to hold. So I just want to invite the question, the person who asked the question, I want to invite you to, inside of your U-turn, inside of that slowing down and looking at your reactivity, look at your anger and get curious about that.
Well said.
I love it.
All right. Let's wrap it.
We're in sync.
Yeah. Take care, y'all.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up this week's episode. Join us again next week for another Why Does My Partner?
We hope that you continue to listen wherever you get your audio, and that you'll follow the show.
To go deeper, join us at our boot camp. You'll find the next date at whydoesmypartner.com.
Did you know you could ask us your question?
Your questions are relational gold.
Go to whydoesmypartner.com to either write in or record your question for a future episode.